Buenas tardes. Pasamos a la tercera ponencia dentro del panel Unidos en la Diversidad, de la teoría a la práctica, qué política cultural para Europa, que estamos organizando en el marco del curso de verano Políticas Culturales en Europa frente a los retos de la investigación. Tenemos ahora con nosotros a Steve Austen, que es miembro permanente de la Fundación Felix Meritis, es miembro del grupo estratégico Solve for Europe, al que ha hecho alusión la anterior ponente. Más que miembro del grupo estratégico, es además fundador, ideólogo de ese movimiento, de esa iniciativa en la que nosotros también como fundación participamos todo lo activamente que podemos y, de hecho, un ejemplo es este curso que hemos organizado de manera coordinada y trabajando junto con los miembros de Solve for Europe, varios de los cuales están hoy aquí. Steve nos ha propuesto como título para su intervención Cultura, Patrimonio y Ciudadanía, nuevos retos para el posicionamiento de las instituciones de arte en Europa, en un momento, además, en el que estamos trabajando de manera intensa en la organización de un encuentro, un seminario que tiene mucho que ver, además, con la intervención anterior, el encuentro anual de Solve for Europe, que tendrá brevemente en Berlín, cuyo título será Las culturas en movimiento, si recuerdo bien el título, y que seguramente Steve hará el enlace con todo esto que debatimos dentro del grupo de Solve for Europe. Steve, bienvenido a Yuste. Hemos hablado mucho sobre este tipo de debates y nos alegra mucho poderte tener aquí en este momento. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Miguel. I will stick to the given theme of today. I have identified 5 topics. So in 20 minutes, it means I have to package each topic in a maximum of 4 minutes. This is not at all a problem because my colleagues, Frans de Ruiter, sitting over there, and the young girl, Nela Hechtling, sitting over there, and the fancy young guy, Hugo de Geef, who hasn't arrived yet, will do the follow-up. My idea is that I do tickle your brains a little bit, because I don't deliver solutions. I have no idea about what would be the best for Europe. I only identified certain dichotomies, certain over-exaggerated assumptions, and some, I would say, very, very positive dreaming. So I will concentrate on the following topics. Cultural policies in Europe in the face of integration challenges. 1, citizen participation. 2, active citizenship and European identity. Active citizenship. 3, European identity. 4, and finally, I stick to the program because I'm a very polite person sometimes, and you invited me to do this job, so I will do it. My last point is then cultural heritage citizenship, new challenges for the repositioning of art institutions in Europe. To start with the first one, some 15 years ago, Nela Hechtling, again Nela, gave me a call from Berlin if I could come over to her place. I'm living in Amsterdam. I got 5 minutes to talk to a round table of approximately 20, 30, 40 individual Berlin professionals working in the wider field of culture, politics, and business. And they were brought together by the former president of the Federal Republic, Richard von Weizsäcker, as a private initiative to have talks. How can we make Berlin better? And how can we support the European unification process? At the time they invited me, they were thinking of starting a Europe-wide support group to ask for more attention and money for culture from Brussels. So my intervention within the 5 minutes was very short. I told them that since the Maastricht Treaty, the European Union, the European Commission, has no jurisdiction whatsoever about the leading cultural policy issues in Europe, because the Maastricht Treaty adopted the so-called subsidiarity principle. That means, as you all know, that the member states are ruling their cultural policy without any interference from Brussels, nor from the European Parliament, nor from the European Court of Justice, nor from the European Court for Human Rights. So what Brussels is doing, and what our representative of Brussels is teaching you, is just how to spend the very, very small amount of money that can have some additional value. Of course, one has to realize that this additional value is nice for those who profit from it, but of course it is nothing in relation to the budget that the member states have to spend, still spend, and are willing to spend. So this notion that the Maastricht Treaty was in fact making one exception from all the European Community rules for the market, they decided in Maastricht that culture is not part of the market economy, so no regulations from Brussels. For us, Dutchies, Frans and me, for instance, we were extremely happy with this decision. Why? It was 1992, so only a few years after the collapse of the Iron Curtain, and we had the impression, now we are really going to profit from Dutch cultural policy. Now they are going to invest in culture. Why? Because the rest of their policy is now homogenized. All products, all services, all activities are under the same rule, so member states want to distinct from each other through their cultural practices, through their cultural policy, through their artworks, and so on. That's what we thought. We even started an association in 1992 with a lot of support, forcing the government now finally pay 1% of the national budget to culture. And also certain member states were very happy with this subsidiarity decision because they thought we can go on to instrumentalize culture through subsidy to be representative for our fantastic society. Before, in the times of the Cold War, this was the instrument to impress the neighbors. Look at it. We, the French, are sending this and this orchestra, which demonstrates that France is the best culture there is. But the Soviet Union satellite countries did the same. So altogether, enormous sums were spent for the sake of nation marketing, to put it bluntly. So it took some time, a couple of years, before the artistic communities in the Western sphere realized that their governments were not at all interested to prolong this competition. After the collapse of Iron Curtain, why should they do so? They better could compete on the market, as the European Union was, it was the nature of it. So there we go. We now find ourselves in most European, Western European member states, and even, especially in certain former East member states, that the artistic communities are suffering from cuts, heavy cuts. And what role is there for them to play? The governments are no longer interested in the representative functions anymore. So that was some kind of a wake-up call. This morning, when I was preparing this, I asked my girlfriend, my partner, Frederica, do you know when exactly was the Treaty of Maastricht? And I thought she could find it on a BlackBerry. But he said immediately, 1992. How do you know that? You just had finalized your studies at Utrecht University. How come you know immediately? She said, I was working in Barcelona until the Treaty of Maastricht. I was paid with black money. From the treaty onwards, I was recognized as one of the citizens of the European Union that were free to work wherever they want. It was what we forget, cultural people, was that Maastricht was more important because it funded the European Union, formalized the European Union, and it formalized the free labor market. So now, since this morning, I do realize that the European Union has, at Maastricht, made an enormous cultural policy activity by freeing the labor market. The beginning of the recognition of the citizen who can take own decisions on where to work, where to live, without any interference from any group, from any committee, from any society, being free, not only that, but from that moment on, under the European regulations with certain obligations, but also completely new with certain rights. This was absolutely new. Before we had workers from the same countries, Italy, Portugal, and so on, but they came in groups, selected by the governments, so there was more or less a practice of constructed collective identities where the individual wish was not important. So with Maastricht, I do underline this personal invention of this morning with Maastricht, we started to create a Europe of member states and citizens. And that this sentence came into Dutch law adapted by the parliament. From now on, the European Union is a union of member states and citizens. So the rights of citizens have to be guaranteed wherever you are working, dreaming, sleeping, or traveling as a European citizen, which means, in this respect, having a European passport, a passport of a member state of the Union. Okay, that's one. I think this was more than my 4 minutes, much more. But my statement is that cultural policies in Europe, in fact, the European Union is producing, without knowing it, enormous, important cultural policy by doing what they are doing, by recognizing the right of the individual. So for Europe has adopted the principle that there is no future for the political unification of Europe unless it's defined as a cultural process. And a cultural process in this context means a process with and by the citizens. So citizenship is the instrument and the definition. I would say citizenship probably distincts European Union, from other continents. Citizenship, in the definition of Lisbon, where now any citizen, one of the 400,000 million citizens in Europe, can go to the, if the national government is not respecting your citizen rights, you can go to the European institutions to get your right that's guaranteed now by the Treaty of Lisbon. Is it, so this European citizenship is additional to your national citizenship. So this is also something completely new. In fact, the European Union is an enormous, successful, crazy, permanent, innovative project. Identity, yes. I would say, I have introduced it, identity is a personal question. I am discussing a lot with Anglo-Saxon writers, scholars, journalists, and cultural activists who still think that something like collective identity does exist. I think this is nice to make a career in certain areas, but of course it is contradictory in itself. If citizenship is a definition of an individual who has the right to define his or her own destiny without being hindered by any external power of whatever nature, then this can't be the same at the very same moment as being part of a collective identity. I know from my youth that this was possible under Catholic rule. There you had even the very impressive trio of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. But I think this is not bringing us anywhere. It was a triple identity. But by following that, citizens' rights were no longer priority. So I go, and you will go with me because you are all European citizens, you are traveling, you want to work everywhere. The priority and the innovation of mankind by the strange concept of the European Union is the individual citizenship, which finally will overcome all these groupings around those who want to be disturbed in their jobs, in their feeling comfortable, and have a look at those who are organizing groups and parties against the European ID. Most of them are run by male people. Have carefully a look. They don't like to be equal to all other citizens, because then they are losing to a high extent their prestige, which is based on, I would say, a combination of romantic feelings, false assumptions, and the wish to go on having a job where you can control the situation. But if Europe of the citizens is something new, then it is that nobody can control where we are going to. Look to the practice of the European Council. Where can you find a successful economic model which is based on decision-making, where all the member states, 26, go, UK is out, 26 ministers, each has the same vote, make decisions every week on important issues, practically in unanimity. Where can you find such a system? So this brings me to the second interesting innovation of European culture, the capacity to come to a decision-making process where nobody has the right to overrule the other. And I think this is an enormous achievement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Muchas gracias por esta reflexión que roza, si me permites, me atrevo a decir, lo filosófico. Sí, decía que muchas gracias por tu intervención, que si me permites, si me atrevo a decir, que roza lo filosófico, con respecto, bueno, pues a este análisis, ¿no?, que has hecho de la situación y los instrumentos que de alguna manera con los que cuenta ya la Unión Europea y tu manera de verlos, ¿no?, con los cuales pues da mucho que pensar. Ese concepto individual, ¿no?, de ciudadanía al que ya nos hemos referido en la jornada de hoy desde diferentes perspectivas y que no hace más que afirmar esa puesta en valor, esa digamos, ese reforzamiento del individuo como tal dentro de la Unión Europea, que podría ser una de las conclusiones de esta jornada. Y luego esa primera reflexión que has hecho sobre el Tratado de Maastricht, que si lo he comprendido bien, viene a decir que contamos de facto con los instrumentos necesarios para hacer valer eso que nosotros tanto deseamos y llamamos cultura europea. Si bien quizás, y corrígeme si me equivoco, no utilizamos de la manera adecuada o todavía nos falta comprender bien los procesos y mecanismos y posibilidades que nos ofrece la Unión Europea para sacarle el máximo partido. Y a lo mejor estamos luchando por algo que si realmente supiéramos manejar, ya lo tendríamos. No sé si he llegado a comprender bien, o por lo menos es la visión que le he dado a tu orientación. Yo, por mi parte, nada más que decir, el espacio está abierto ahora para las preguntas, el debate en este último tramo de la jornada, que ha sido intensa, si bien apasionante. Entonces, quiero aprovechar si alguien quiere mencionar algo a las reflexiones de Steve. Sí, aquí. ¿Te presentas, por favor?
Sí, soy Jairo Marcos, un poco desde el ámbito de la filosofía y del periodismo. ¿Cómo conjugar esa identidad europea de la que hablas, individual, con un contexto de estados-nación en los cuales cada vez hay Europas de más velocidades, estados de primera, de segunda, de tercera, y si en base a esa Europa no estamos creando también ciudadanos de primera, de segunda, de tercera categoría? Gracias.
Miguel, can you say in short in English? Because
He said that how can we combine this position you put on the table in a moment in the European Union where we are creating different kinds of citizenships, where we have citizens of first, second, third category, and where we have different speeds at the developing the European Union. How can we combine that with that concept of citizenship you mentioned?
in my concept, there are no different definitions of citizenship. I take the legal standpoint. So, in Anglo-Saxon literature, there is used the notion cultural citizenship. I don't believe in that. The European Union is based on a legal framework that guarantees all member states and citizens the provisions of what the European Union has to deliver to make it possible for the member states as well as for the individual citizens to take their decisions according to the law, according to the European institutions like the Court for Human Rights and the European Court of Justice. That means that I'm not talking, because only if you do fit in that legal framework, then you are legally a European citizen. If you don't have the status of that legal body citizen, then you can live and work sometimes in the European Union. But of course, your rights are rather limited. And this is, of course, has to be discussed. But my main point is that the citizenship concept guaranteed by a legal structure is absolutely unique in the world and beneficial for the first time after the war for any individual citizen that is carrying a passport of a member state.
Gracias, Steve. La profesora Rosa María de Codes también quería intervenir. Sí, micro de mano.
Ok, lo voy a presentar en español.
Sí.
Claro, el doctor Steve Austen pone el énfasis en la idea de que la Unión Europea tiene un marco legal. La Unión Europea se construye con un marco legal. Y en ese marco legal es donde se construye el concepto de ciudadano, que es un éxito. Claro que es un éxito. Porque a ese ciudadano, en ese marco legal, se le da los mismos derechos, obligaciones y libertades, a todos igual. El concepto de igualdad está dentro de ese marco de ciudadanía. y es fundamental entender la ciudadanía desde la igualdad. Ahora, ese es el ideal de la Unión Europea. Otra cosa es la realidad de esa diversidad que es Europa. Entonces, ahí es donde juegan las posibilidades de adaptación, de acomodo, de experiencias positivas, porque el marco legal no puede sustituir a la realidad. El marco legal es el referente para no generar exclusión, el referente para no generar discriminación. Es el referente para todos nosotros, construir ciudadanía en ese marco legal, sí. Pero luego tenemos mucha otra diversidad sociológica que difícilmente es compatible a veces con el marco legal. Yo estoy muy de acuerdo con él en que el gran aporte del siglo XX es la creación de Europa y de la ciudadanía en Europa.
He will, can you say it in 2 words?
Well, actually, what she says is that she agrees with your presentation and your argument, where we have a legal frame, and it is this legal frame under which is the European Union built that give us the possibility to build this European citizenship, even if the reality is another one. So we have to accommodate this legal reality to the practical reality, the diversity of Europe. Correct me. That was a big summary, but...
Yeah, I got it from your presentation, but I don't agree, absolutely not. If one takes the word diversity, I like it. But basically, the individuals, the citizens, do decide themselves in which format they congregate to give their personal color to this diversity. There is no role for the European Union. Why should it be? The years of patronage are over. We are still suffering from colonizing other people. So for the first time, you as an individual has the right to colonize yourself. So go ahead. Mm-hmm. I don't mind. Mm-hmm. I even support it.
Mm-hmm. Claro, suficiente. Sí, la profesora Cristina, y ya vamos cerrando porque ya cumplimos y se nos va la luz para seguir grabando. Una última cuestión.
Okay.
Espera que se ponga el micrófono para... Hacemos una prueba en cabina a ver si escucha bien la traducción. Es que no le funcionaba antes el auricular.
Yes, one. Oh. Okay. Yeah. I will look to your lips.
Micro, por favor. Micro de mano. No, es...
I agree with the professor. Congratulations. But yo creo que hay una cosa. Europa nos da los derechos a todos iguales y nos da unos derechos que nosotros, como ha dicho el profesor, y yo comenté esta mañana, no sabemos a veces aprovechar suficientemente. Pero una cosa es tener la ciudadanía y los mismos derechos y otra cosa es que tengamos todos que llevar el mismo traje. No, no hay que llevar el mismo traje. Ni los estados pueden darte lo mismo en virtud de sus problemas internos, por ejemplo, o limitaciones o porque no quieren. Por ejemplo, yo creo que en España muchos ciudadanos pensarán que somos ciudadanos de segunda, pero tenemos una seguridad social mucho mejor que otros países europeos que son mucho más ricos. Y eso es porque España ha optado porque en su, diríamos, sistema social entiende que a lo mejor la gente gana menos, pero tiene mejor seguridad y atención médica. Y eso te da una base en la cual, aunque ganes menos, sabes que siempre tienes garantizada una operación, tengas a la edad que tengas. Hay muchos países que la medicación para el cáncer a partir de una edad no se la dan. Y en España se la dan. Entonces, de la misma manera que cada estado desarrolla el sistema, otra cosa, el ciudadano no va a tener el mismo nivel. Otra cosa es que confundamos la desigualdad social con Europa. Europa no puede solucionar la desigualdad social. Hace una política de convergencia, que ha sido un eje claro de la política europea. Incluso, aunque el país renuncie y ponga barreras como Hungría, le sigue mandando los fondos estructurales. Porque tiene un nivel económico y se lo da, por un principio que está definido en el sistema. Ahora bien, la desigualdad social es un tema que tendremos que desarrollar nosotros. Y luego yo quiero insistir en un tema que me parece muy importante del profesor. La integración se hace andando. No solo puede ser legal, tiene que ser andando, practicándola. Y eso es complicado, porque a veces incluso hay más integración que otra. Por ejemplo, y perdonad que utilice un ejemplo y sea larga, yo he propuesto a 3 alcaldes y a un presidente de comunidad una campaña para formar a sirios y refugiados en temas de restauración del patrimonio para que vuelvan a Siria. Los 3 me han dicho, ahora que tenemos tanto paro, no podemos recibir más gente. Eso no tiene la culpa Europa. Es un rechazo como consecuencia de que el alcalde no quiere tener problemas con sus ciudadanos. Ni es racista. Hace 10 años, cuando había mucho trabajo, hubiera sido más fácil. Es decir, que la vida no tenemos que llevar todos el mismo uniforme. En eso yo es lo que... Y esa decisión tiene que depender del individuo, como dice el profesor, en su propia selección. Gracias.
Gracias.
I'm very glad you give me the opportunity to take my last box, which I didn't manage to do. That is the repositioning of the cultural sector in all member states. You are right. This problem is there. It can't be left in the hands of the Commission, nor in the hands of the European Parliament. Here, the civil sector, and I would say to you, especially the culture sector, that has been absent for too long to take a standpoint in the discussion. First, citizenship education. All these cultural institutes do have audiences, still a vast amount in Europe. Do they now, in the new circumstances, talk to their audiences about what their role as a cultural institute should be in the citizenship education in their village, city, or country? No, they don't. So start with that. Then engage, if you are an orchestra or opera or performing arts or a festival, do engage with civic groups. I would say for the younger generation, more particularly with the European-wide networks of social entrepreneurs and the social designers. They have enormous networks of similar motivated people, but the motivation is my concern and my observation. The motivation is limited to improve rather local situations, which is nice, but the idea that by doing so you are taking part in a European project, that in fact you are a political subject. That notion is not there yet, and there I do wish and expect that the established cultural institutions are making the link with this enormous, vast and promising civic initiative world of people between 18 and 30, everywhere in Europe. And this can bring a power of citizens which can finally influence not a politician, but can influence public opinion by talking in the pub in the families, in their work. The idea that the European Union is a community of individual rights and obligations, and through that of practicing values, only can bring over the curtain, I would say, if the individuals decide to be an ambassador for this marvelous project by doing what they are doing. And here the cultural sector, in my opinion, has an enormous role to play. There are nice examples like Mahir in Sinop in Turkey doing. There are more. It's a combination of social entrepreneurship, which is mostly led by artists, strangely enough, and the social design aspect, which is booming, making a lot of money, mostly led by artists. So what is more easy than to bring this cultural world together, reposition it, no longer as representatives of the marvelous state of whatever country, but for the sake of the citizens that you need not to die out. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Steve. Poco más que añadir. Agradecerte tu intervención, tus respuestas, y nos vamos con ese concepto de apostar por la ciudadanía y, por supuesto, por la sociedad civil que acompañe a esa ciudadanía. Muchas gracias. Bueno, pues cerramos ya la sesión de hoy. Muchas gracias a todos por vuestra atención, por vuestra participación. Espero que os haya dado mucho que pensar y que podáis seguir las discusiones, el debate de lo que hemos hablado hoy durante la cena. Y nos volvemos a ver mañana. El autobús os recoge a las 8:30. A las 8:30.